Shall we start? Everyone. I hope you all are safe and sound at your places. I am Chandrika Lamba, moderator for today's event. Welcomes you all in another session of hashtag Mental Hour. So today we have a very special guest with us, Advocate Angad Mehta, and he has graduated founding member of Atharva Law Chambers. Mr. Angad has graduated in 2005 from NALSAR University of Law, Hyderabad. He immediately joined the chambers of Mr. Arun Khatpalia, senior advocate, who specializes in shareholders disputes and arbitration. He has been practicing NCLT, NCLT, and Delhi High Court. In 2009, has been appointed as panel counsel to represent the government of NCT of Delhi. He has represented the government of Delhi and several public companies before the High Court of India. Mr. Angad specializes in arbitration, shareholders dispute, and insolvency. From here, I request Mr. Angad to take over the screen and present his views on today's topic, why suit when there is an alternative, pros and cons of ADR. And I request all the participants to write their questions and queries in the chat box, which will be taken care in the Q&A session.
Should I start? Should I commence?
The volume is low. You're audible with the volume.
Hello. Hi, Angad. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
You can start the session. We are also live on our Facebook channel. So most of the participants we have shifted towards Facebook so that they can put up their queries over there. And, you can get, because the clarity over the Zoom has been decreased due to some technical fault from the backend. So people can view from on the Facebook itself.
Sure. So, okay, I'll start then. Okay.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. So the topic that I have been invited to speak on today is the pros and cons of ADR. Now, before we begin with exactly what, before I get into the actual merits of the topic, let's start with what exactly ADR is. Now, ADR is an acronym that stands for Alternative Dispute Resolution. ADR is a mechanism for resolving and solving disputes outside of the court process and outside all the technicalities of the court process. ADR is largely bifurcated into two avenues. One is a mediation and conciliation or arbitration. I understand that most of you would be familiar with arbitration, but not so much with mediation and conciliation, because mediation and conciliation has not caught on so much in India as yet. It is, however, a developing field. Mediation and conciliation is more of a settling mechanism rather than an adversarial dispute resolution mechanism. So what you would have in a mediation and conciliation is both the parties sitting across the table. There will be a mediator or a conciliator who sits between the two parties and tries to amicably resolve the issues. Arbitration, on the other hand, is more of an adversarial proceeding where you will have either one or three or five arbitrators. The general rule is that there should be an odd number of arbitrators. And these two arbitrators are similar to what the functions that they perform is similar to what the judges perform. They sit, they hear the parties, and then eventually they pass what is called an award. Both of these are not hit by the rigors of court. While there are the general laws of the land apply, certain court procedures and the technicalities of court procedures do not apply to both of these proceedings. Both of these proceedings are governed by the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, which I will get into detail in a bit in a little while. Now, as I had indicated, conciliation and mediation is still in its very, very nascent stages in India. There are very few authorities and individuals who are actually qualified or specialized mediators and conciliators in the country. So the more opted for route for parties is arbitration rather than conciliation, at least in India. Now, what happens in conciliation, unlike an arbitration, like I had said, conciliation is not an adversarial form of a proceeding. That is, there are no parties who oppose each other. Both of the parties come to a conciliator or a mediator with the view to resolve their disputes and settle their disputes. So both of them do not intend to approach the mediator with forms of arguments or voluminous documents or evidence or pleadings. They place the gist of their case before the mediator or the conciliator, and the conciliator, after hearing both the parties, tries to amicably resolve the issue. Now, what is important in a conciliation and mediation is that it requires the consent of both parties, unlike an arbitration. So an arbitration is a situation where both parties put forth their arguments. The arbitrators then decide on the basis of the arguments and evidence who has a better case, and they pass their award. Unlike this, mediation or a conciliation is, number one, it's a purely voluntary mechanism. Number two, it is a mutual mechanism. So both parties have to agree to the final settlement that may be passed by a conciliator or a mediator. The way this works is the conciliator or a mediator executes and draws up what is called a final settlement agreement. The settlement agreement then has the force of law. It has to go through all the technicalities of registration and payment of stamp duty. And once a settlement agreement is signed, stamped, and registered, it is completely enforceable, just like a court judgment. The good thing about mediation is, since it is a settlement agreement and since it is a consent agreement, there is very little scope for challenging a settlement or a settlement which has been arrived at through a conciliation or mediation. Now, arbitration is a little more complex. Arbitration is governed by the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996. There have been several revisions to the Arbitration and Conciliation Act since its inception, and the law itself is far more developed than the law on conciliation and mediation. There are certain sections in the Arbitration Act which also deal with conciliation and mediation, though those are not referred to and implemented a lot. Now, there have been, as I had said earlier, there have been a lot of developments and modifications and amendment to the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, the most recent one being in 2019. Earlier, what we were witnessing in arbitrations was that arbitrations, much like court proceedings in India, were languishing. They were continuing for several years on end. A lot of people and judges and arbitrators who were presiding over arbitrations did not have uh, time to hear more than one or two hearings in the entire year, or perhaps three hearings in the entire year. And therefore, arbitrations were being delayed just like court proceedings. What was an additional factor that was making arbitration in India very difficult is the costs that were involved. Um, prior to an amendment which was carried out in 2015 to the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, there was no cap on the fees that the arbitrator could choose. So each arbitrator determined his own fees, and the fees were generally not lump sum, they were charged per sitting. This, however, has been done away with, and now there is a new law in place. So what was actually happening in arbitrations was not only were arbitrations being extremely prolonged. I have personal experiences where I have done arbitrations that have carried on for 5 or 6 years, but that arbitrations were also becoming increasingly very expensive. Now, if one were to appoint an arbitrator, say for a high stake matter, for appointing a high court, retired high court, or a retired Supreme Court judge as an arbitrator, they would typically charge anywhere between 1.5 to 3 lakhs per sitting. Usually, the way arbitration works is a sole arbitrator is not decided upon. The panel of arbitrate tribunal generally comprises of 3 arbitrators. So it was working out to be extremely expensive and extremely time consuming to carry out arbitrations in India. Now, what till 2015, there were no timelines and there were no fixing of fees. What the Law Commission did in 2015 was it brought about an amendment, and it regularized the timelines and the fees that arbitrators could choose. What are these timelines and what are the fees? Now the fees are capped at a certain percentage of the sum which is involved in the dispute. There are 5 or 6 slabs. There is a slab from 1 to 20 lakhs, from 20 to 50 lakhs, 50 lakhs to 1 crore, 1 crore to 10 crore, and 10 crore and above. So the fees of the tribunal, not fees of each arbitrator, the fees of the tribunal has been capped at a certain percentage of the sum of the dispute. So say the dispute is for 100 crores, the fees will be capped at 10% or 15% of the sum in dispute, that is 100 crores. Now this 10 or 15% fee which has been capped is payable to the entire tribunal. It is not payable per arbitrator. The second most important thing that the 2015 Act introduced were timelines. As I had indicated earlier, there were no timelines within which an arbitration had to be concluded, or any applications had to be filed, or pleadings had to be completed. And therefore, it took years and years even for basic pleadings, statement of claims, statement of defenses, etc. to be filed before the tribunal. What the 2015 Act has now done is that it has capped the arbitration proceedings at 18 months from the date of constitution of the tribunal. That is, if the tribunal is constituted on the 1st of January of a particular year, the entire proceedings of the arbitration have to be completed within 18 months of 1st of January. The law does allow for a little bit of flexibility where there are voluminous or complicated matters. So the timelines can be extended. However, the extension of the timelines is also extremely strict. One has to apply not only to the tribunal for an extension of the timeline, the tribunal has to pass an opinion, and the parties then have to move the court for an extension of time. Generally, the courts grant an extension of time of between 3 to 6 months for conclusion of the proceedings. So the legislature has recently tried to sort of streamline the proceedings to make it a little more cost effective and a little more time effective for arbitrations. In 2019, there was a subsequent amendment to the Arbitration Act. What this introduced was it slight slightly introduced a slight amount of flexibility to the timelines that were granted. Now, while the timelines still remain 18 months, they have introduced an outer timeline from which pleadings, that is, all the statement of claim, statement of defense, etc., have to be filed. There has been a timeline within which these have to be completed, which is 6 months from the Constitution, and the 18 months for conclusion of the proceedings starts from the conclusion of the pleadings, of conclusion of filing of the pleadings. So now you actually have a period of 24 months within which you can complete your arbitration proceedings. However, this again is subject to extremely strict scrutiny. Once the timelines do expire, you have to again move the tribunal has to pass an assessment, and you then have to approach the court for an extension of the timeline. So the important question that we really need to ask ourselves is why should we opt for alternative dispute resolution mechanisms rather than going to court? Now, as most people would be aware, and as India is infamously known, court proceedings drag on for years on end, and that is only before one particular forum. Like if your case is filed before the trial court, it could take you anywhere between 5 to 7 years just at the trial court level. There is a first appellate court, there is a second appellate court, there is then the High Court, and then there is the Supreme Court. So there are 3 to 4 stages of proceedings that one has to go to if one goes through court. Added to that, the trouble with you need to pay court fees, and the court fees varies from states to states. Now, some states have extremely low court fees. Some states have court fees based on the claim or a percentage of the value of the property which you are claiming. This made going to court extremely difficult. Apart from that, the legal costs that were involved towards court proceedings, paying lawyers, paying clerks, for office expenses, etc., were extremely high. So court actually became a luxury forum where people could agitate their disputes, because people who were willing to exhaust that kind of time and money were the only people who were actually going to court. And what it actually resulted in was that justice was eventually not being done. Now, what has been tried to be introduced through the ADR mechanism is a process by which courts can be decongested. Now, arbitrations as well as mediations, both are mutual. They have to be agreed to mutually between the parties before they can proceed to any of these proceedings. It is necessary, if one proceeds to arbitration, that there has to be an arbitration agreement between the parties, and only then can one proceed to arbitration. I have already in the past just now explained to you the entire process of arbitration and conciliation and mediation, and why it appears to be and is a more reasonable option for people to proceed to. One other great advantage that we have with arbitrations and mediations are there are a lot of disputes, and I have done a lot of disputes that involve a lot of technicalities. For example, we may have disputes arising out of shareholders agreements or share purchase agreements. We may have construction disputes. We may have building disputes that require technical expertise. Now, I have done cases where there are road construction matters which have proceeded to arbitration. There are building disputes that have proceeded to arbitration, and all of these require specialized knowledge. Now, the unfortunate thing with courts is eventually when the matter does come up, the matter is placed before only a legally is placed and can only be placed before the judge who is only legally trained. He is not technically trained. So the judge is unfortunately at a disadvantage when he has to decide issues regarding technicalities like road construction projects. Road construction projects is extremely fact heavy. It involves understanding a lot of technical aspects of how the construction is to be carried out, what happens if certain engineering requirements are not met. Now, judges are unable to deal with these questions. So what actually happens in court proceedings is then you have to involve the expert advice of an engineer. who comes in, gives his expert advice. He is then cross-examined. This evidentiary process itself takes an extremely long time. Once this is concluded, is then placed before the judge, and then the judge, with his lack of expertise, decides on which way, on how the evidence is to be decided. Now, to do away with this, what we can do in ADR mechanisms is, and I have seen this personally, we can appoint field and domain experts to be arbitrators. So what I have recently started doing is, if I have an arbitration that involves a road construction project, I would typically, my arbitrator would typically be an engineer, say with the National Highways Authority or the Ministry of Road Transport, or somebody who is qualified in the field to decide these issues. Appointing, say, a judge, a retired High Court or a retired Supreme Court judge, really does not help me on this issue, because they are not going to understand the technicalities involved in the arbitration. And as I had mentioned, since these sort of arbitrations are extremely fact heavy, they have little to do with the law except for interpretation of the agreements. It is advisable to appoint technical people. Now, this is a process that is available only in the ADR mechanism. This is not a process which is available to parties who are before a court. Now, why are more and more people opting for ADR mechanisms? Number one, there is no rigor of the complex court procedures involved in ADR. Now, especially with the lockdown that has happened, a lot of court cases have been put in cold storage, and there is really no indication of when courts are going to be opened. Now, if we examine this, if we were to transpose this and put it onto an ADR platform, what we can see is we are done away with any complexities of court procedures. Now, a court procedure typically involves a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of filing. There is a lot of work that goes into it, because you have, if there are urgent applications that require to be moved, you have to move it before the registry. The registry vets it, puts it up before the court. The court master then decides whether it actually should be put up before the court. So all of this is cut out in the ADR mechanism. ADR can be done entirely on an online platform, and that is the way things are proceeding right now. Your applications have no strict formats. Your arguments are not required to be put within any straitjackets. So there is a lot more freedom which is available in the ADR mechanism, which is why I see a lot more contracts and agreements having clauses for arbitration and conciliation. The other thing that is extremely helpful in an ADR mechanism is, most people who have document-based disputes are the ones who proceed to arbitration and mediation. And this is so because once the parties are aware of what the documents are, and the documents are not disputed, there are only really two issues that arise. Number one is, what is the evidentiary value of these documents? And number two, what is the enforceability of these documents? Both of these issues are issues that can be decided by the tribunal by the tribunal or a mediator, without entering into a very complex or heavy evidential hearing. That is, there is no requirement for any cross-examination of parties. There is no examination for parties to lead any evidence other than what has already been placed before the tribunal. So this cuts out a lot of time, as a lot of you perhaps would be aware. A lot of time is spent on securing witnesses, transporting witnesses from a particular place to arrive at the court. All of these lengthy procedures are completely done away with. The other thing that ADR mechanisms have now equipped themselves with is complete online hearings. We have seen how courts right now have struggled with online hearings. The ADR mechanism is far quicker, it is far more reliable, and it is also far more user friendly. where three arbitrators could be sitting in three completely different countries, or indeed even in three different cities, and one can still have a full-fledged arbitration or mediation hearing. The other pro of ADR mechanisms, like I had stated earlier, is of course that there is now a timeline um, of 18 months within which the ADR mechanism has to be completed. One important issue that will arise is what is the enforceability and what is the efficacy of this ADR, either a settlement agreement or an award that comes to be passed in an ADR. Now, the Arbitration Act itself recognizes the enforceability of awards. Similarly, the Arbitration Act also recognizes the enforceabilities of settlement agreements which may be arrived at between parties. And therefore, there is actually no legal hurdle in implementation or execution of awards. The other very important thing that that I should also place before you is what is the scope of interference in an award or a settlement agreement that has been passed? Because a lot of times what we see happening in civil disputes is judgments of lower courts get overturned by high courts or by supreme courts, and the process of overturning these judgments itself takes between 5 to 7 years. In an ADR mechanism, the courts have repeatedly now laid down that the scope for interference is extremely minimal. So it is extremely rare that courts will interfere in an award that is passed by a tribunal or a settlement agreement that has been arrived at. This, since the role of the courts is restricted to a very minimal level, of course, the timelines on this are much faster. So typically, a challenge to an award should not take more than 6 to 12 months before a particular court. A challenge against that order of the high court or the trial court upholding or rejecting the award will again take within 3 to 6 months. And uh, before the Supreme Court, of course, the interference is extremely minimal. So what I have seen in arbitrations that I have now initiated under the 2015 Arbitration Act with the 2015 and 19 amendments is that I actually see results of my arbitration within about 2 years of the proceeding having commenced itself, which in itself is an extremely short timeline. The other issue that we need to remember, that we should remember in arbitrations and ADR mechanisms, is that adjournments are very difficult to come by. The way proceedings work is, since there are minimal procedural issues involved in arbitration and mediation, dates are generally fixed directly for final arguments. So typically what will happen is, on the first hearing, the arbitrators will sit, they will decide their fees, they will set down the timelines for your filing of the statement of claim, the statement of defense, rejoinder, and they will then directly fix a date for arguments. So if I have my first hearing on, say, the 1st of January, it is very likely that I will directly get a date for final arguments on, say, sometime in June or July. The final arguments, unless it is an extremely complex arbitration.
So you are on mute. So you are not audible. Angad sir, you are not audible, Angad sir.
Sorry, just give me 1 minute.
Yes. You're audible now.
Audible now? Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sorry, there appeared to be some software issue. Right. So like I was stating earlier, there is an increasing shift now towards alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, and parties are finding it not only more and more physically convenient, but also financially convenient to move to ADR, alternative dispute resolution mechanisms. Uh, Personally, I also find this to be a far more effective resolution process. Not only is there a lot more flexibility involved, but there is also a lot more work that can get done through the ADR mechanism itself. Um, the procedures itself are not as stiff and as fixed as court. There is a lot more flexibility with timings. There is a lot more flexibility in dealing with the arbitrators, and you're not bound by very strict and rigid rules of procedure. So I see a, a mushrooming of lot of disputes heading towards ADR in the near future. I do not see a lot of people wanting to go to court to resolve their issues, and especially commercial disputes, which are now being dispute commercial issues which are now being disputed are more and more being settled through the mechanism of ADR. So I see it as, I quite honestly see it as the future. I also see it as a very practical, cost effective, and time effective alternative to court dispute resolution mechanisms. This I'm going to end my webinar with this, and I'm told there is a half an hour Q&A session. So I'm happy to take on any Q&A questions which are put on.
So that was an insightful presentation from your side, sir. The question we have is from Ariharan Singh.
Mhm.
He's asking, what are your views on the miscellaneous provisions under Chapter X of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996? Do they need revision or changes?
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the question?
What are your views on the miscellaneous provisions under Chapter X of Arbitration and Conciliation Act 1996? Do we need any revision or changes?
Okay. I'm sorry, the role of arbitral institutions. Yes. Right. I'm sorry, I completely forgot about Chapter 10 of the Arbitration Act. Um, just sorry, 1 second. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the Chapter 10 deals with hello.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yeah. Sorry, just 1 second. I'm just trying to pull out the Arbitration Act.
No issues, sir. I think Anil wants to know your views on the miscellaneous provisions.
Yeah. So
Do they need any revision or changes?
right. Well, no, I don't think we require any changes, because if you see Chapter 10, Chapter 10 is basically a chapter which deals, and it has been formulated with providing some sort of security to arbitrators. Now, if you see the things which are there under um, Section 10 deal with, Chapter 10, which are miscellaneous, deal with costs which are involved in the arbitration proceeding itself. Now, there have been, under the 2015 Act, there have been some revisions to Chapter 10. I think Section 38A has been introduced. But basically, Chapter 10 is to protect, has been formulated with a view to protect the arbitrators itself. If you take a look at, say, Section 38 or 39, which deal with lien on arbitral awards, which basically state that the tribunal is entitled to exercise or withhold the award till its fees have been paid. So in that sense, I don't think there is any revision required to Chapter 10 of the Arbitration Act, because it is basically a security for the tribunal and to ensure that the tribunal members themselves get the fees which are due to them under the Act.
Okay, I hope, Ariharan, that question is well solved by the sir. Sir, Priya is asking, can mediation and arbitration can be combined?
Yes, they can. Under the so it is possible while you are before an arbitration. Generally, what happens is the way the arbitration clauses are structured is there is a process for a conciliation or a mediation before actually proceeding to arbitration. However, even if you do choose to proceed to arbitration, that does not bar you from initiating mediation proceedings, and the arbitrators themselves can act as mediators, or you could opt for a suspension of the arbitral proceedings to initiate mediation proceedings. And I have seen this happening more and more in government contracts, where once arbitrations are initiated, the government realizes that the stakes are extremely high, they wish to settle the matters. They do move applications, mutual applications are moved for suspension of the proceedings so that they may mediate and negotiate terms of a settlement.
Okay, so Ariharan said that you have answered the question well, the previous one. Now the another question he's asking is, do we need a mediation and negotiation legislation in our country, as it is emerging as a preferred option for resolving disputes?
See, I don't think we require a legislation as such. What we are seeing more and more happening is we have institutional forums for mediation and conciliation. There are a number of one or two government platforms which are available. There are also private institutions which are setting up mediation and conciliation cells, which offer the services of experienced and qualified mediators. So now the rules which govern these mediation proceedings are, of course, institutional rules of that institution itself. So I don't think we require any statute to regulate mediations, because you have to understand that mediation, by its definition itself, is a mutual process, right? So there are of course some basic ground rules which should be there, but those are well taken care of by the institutions themselves. We don't require a specific statute to deal with mediations and conciliations.
Okay. Okay. So, sir, the next question is: are ADRs the new normal during the post-COVID-19 era, as the courts are clearly struggling and hearings are routinely adjourned in the absence of any universal process in place to proceed?
See, I certainly see ADR as a very viable future and alternative to court proceedings. Unfortunately, there are certain limitations on ADR also, because there are certain types of disputes which cannot be referred to ADR. For example, criminal disputes cannot be referred to ADR. Issues regarding, say, wills cannot be referred to ADR. The courts have authoritatively laid down the guidelines and the formula within which ADR can operate. But to answer your question, I do see ADR as a very viable future and alternative, especially in commercial disputes. I see them as a very viable future to court proceedings.
Okay. Sir, the next question is: what could a mediator do when the parties expect the settlement conference to conclude on the basis of the mediator's proposal instead of coming to an agreement on their own?
Sorry,
Uh,
could you just repeat that?
yes, sir. What could a mediator do when the
Hmm.
parties expect the settlement conference to conclude on the basis of mediator's proposal instead
Right.
of coming to an agreement on their own? Question mark. In bracket, it is written when they rely completely on the mediator instead of negotiating.
Right. So you have to understand that even in a mediation, the parties are not completely reliant on the mediators. The parties will come to the mediator. Of course, he doesn't force a party into a settlement. Neither can he impose himself on any party to a mediation, since the mediation itself is completely voluntary and mutual. Um, so if the parties do have some sort of a solution outside of what the mediator has himself suggested, the parties are free to opt for that, and a settlement agreement on those terms can be drafted and ratified by the mediator. They are not bound by any solution that the mediator himself provides.
Okay. So the next question we have is from Sarthak Raj. How has the scenario of investor-state arbitration changed given the problems that arouse as the fight industries cases?
So I'm not aware of the White Industries case, so I'll have to read up and get back to you on that.
Sure. So, sir will provide that in the mail, Sarthak. The next question is from Kaushal Modi. How far ADR would convert ODR after and in this COVID situation?
Can I have the full form of ODR?
I request Kushal to write the full form of ODR in the
Kushal,
chat.
yeah.
Okay, so next question we have is from Abhay Pratap. What is the difference between venue, place, and seat of arbitration?
Right, Abhay, to answer this question of yours, it's slightly complicated because the law itself on this is not very clear. There are judgments trying to demarcate the difference, but the basic principle of having a seat of arbitration and a venue of arbitration, and the difference between the two is basically just this. A venue signifies merely a place where an arbitration proceeding can be conducted, whereas the seat signifies the law which is applicable to that particular dispute. Now, for example, I could have the seat of my arbitration in Delhi, which means that once the award is passed, the challenge to that award lies, say, either at the High Court of Delhi or the trial courts of Delhi. But the venue of my arbitration could, say, be in Singapore or in London. So what that basically just means is that the proceedings may be held either in Singapore or in London, but the law that actually governs the execution and enforcement of the arbitration proceedings is going to be Delhi.
Okay, I hope sir has answered your question well, Abhay. Sir, Kaushal has provided the full form. Now the question is how far the ADR, that is alternate dispute resolution, would convert online dispute resolution ODR after and in this
Yeah,
COVID
okay.
situation.
Online dispute. Yeah, so Kaushal, to answer your question, that has already started happening. Pre-COVID, it's been happening. Now, again, there are a lot of private platforms that provide ODR solutions. So you can empanel yourself with them as an empaneled arbitrator. They mark cases to you. There are parties who are sitting in, one party is probably sitting in Bombay, one is sitting in Bangalore. I could be sitting in Delhi. And that shift towards ODR has already started happening pre-COVID. I see it accelerating in the post-COVID period, but that shift has already started happening.
Okay, so there is a very interesting question. The life sciences companies which are finding potential life-saving vaccine to treat
Right.
COVID-19 virus are in the lookout of partnering with companies in effort to develop a vaccine quickly. However, if dispute arises between them, then can we say that ADR or arbitration shall be the only best option to resolve these such disputes, as life depends on it quite literally?
See, again, it will depend on the nature of the dispute. I'm assuming these disputes and the agreements that you're going to enter into are going to be purely commercial disputes, right? So the disputes which are going to be agitated are also actually purely commercial disputes. As I had indicated in my presentation, also it is important that if there is for a precursor to either going for mediation or for arbitration is an existence of an arbitration agreement. So if the contract or the agreement between the two parties does have an arbitration agreement, then yes, the parties will be going to arbitration.
Okay, sir, the question is now, is ADR a forward-looking option to resolve insurance disputes in the is the new normal?
Yes, absolutely. Because insurance also are purely commercial and contractual disputes. So yes, ADR will be an option for resolution of insurance disputes.
Okay. So the next question we have is from Priya. Can a company file a civil or commercial lawsuit after signing an arbitration agreement?
So Priya, the answer to your question is going to be a little complex because the Arbitration Act itself provides for approaching the courts either prior to, during, or after the arbitral proceedings have been initiated. The law on the subject is quite well settled that if there is an arbitration agreement, you have to initiate arbitration and you have to take your disputes to arbitration. However, there are situations where you may not immediately have appointed your arbitrator. It may take, say, a week or 10 days or 2 weeks for the parties to actually agree and appoint and constitute the tribunal. So, what happens in such a situation if you require, say, an urgent relief? Since a tribunal has not been constituted, you obviously cannot go before the tribunal. So, the Arbitration Act itself allows you to file petitions. They're not called commercial suits, they're called commercial petitions. So you are allowed under the Arbitration Act to approach the courts in commercial petitions to protect interest, uh, even though there is an arbitration clause. But the minute the arbitral tribunal is constituted, the petition which is before the court gets transferred to the arbitral tribunal for deciding.
Okay. So there's a question. I don't know how complete it is. What are the other laws that come into picture other than Arbitration Act in case?
So right now there is only the Arbitration and Conciliation Act of 1996 in India, which governs ADR mechanisms. There are certain provisions in the Code of Civil Procedure which also allow for mediations, but there is nothing apart from the Arbitration Act which governs arbitrations. Mediations, of course, like I said, are mutual, so you can have a mutual agreement to enter into mediation and conciliation talks. And there is, as of now, there's no particular statute that governs mediations and conciliations, though the Arbitration Act does lightly touch upon them.
Okay. Sir, there is a question from Supriya. While certain contractual adjustments have always been made due to recession, wars, oil embargoes, natural disaster 9/11, but
Hmm.
natural disaster 9/11, but none of these events has such a widespread impact as COVID-19 pandemic is having. What role does ADR play in enabling the contracting parties to reach a quick solution in this scenario?
In the context of COVID-19, is that the question?
Yes, I think yes.
Okay,
What are
so
the
that,
context?
yeah, that again is the law on that subject is evolving right now because at the time of drafting of the contracts, I don't think anybody had contemplated a situation that we would ever in our lifetimes be faced with a situation such as COVID-19. Typically, the contracts do have something what is called a force majeure clause, like you had said, which allows for parties to suspend their obligations where there are riots, wars, internal disturbances, political agitations. But the consequence of COVID 19 still remains to be seen. Parties have already initiated arbitration citing force majeure conditions on the account of COVID 19. Results, of course, have not immediately come yet. The courts have, however, taken a very liberal and proactive view, and they have allowed for reliefs. They have been liberal in granting reliefs based on defaults that have occurred due to COVID-19. And I also see arbitrations proceeding in the same way.
Okay. So the next question is from Wasim. If the arbitration can loan, if the arbitration on loan can witness withdraw their name in case to provide main person who's taking loan to free of the case.
Uh, I've not understood the question. I'm sorry.
Yes, I can repeat this question. If the arbitration on loan can witness withdraw their name in case to provide main person who's taken the loan to free of the case.
I think my understanding of the question is whether the person who has taken the loan can rid himself of the case. Is that the question?
I I
Well,
assume that.
so
Yeah.
if that is the question, then no, you cannot, since the person who has taken the loan himself has to be the witness. So you cannot ask somebody to step in for you and take up the case for you. You will have to present the case. You will have to be there as a witness in the case.
The next question we have is, why would now be an optimal time for the parties to initiate or review an exploration of possible settlement or some other form of alternate dispute resolution?
Well, now with the way things have moved with COVID-19, I think people have realized the futility, unfortunately, and the problem that the courts are facing in dealing with a situation like COVID-19. Unfortunately, our courts are very physical presentation driven at the moment. That is something that needs to change. So with this COVID-19, I think courts have come to the realization that technology is actually the way forward, and more of work has to be done online, not only to cut costs, but also to cut crowds, to cut and to save time. So I think this is actually the perfect situation for courts to make that transition. And and of course, now that people have realized that courts have remained closed in such a situation, God forbid, should such a situation be faced again, the only real resolution that people have is to opt for ADR.
Okay, so the next question we have is, how could ADR be utilized to minimize the risk of legal malpractice claims, which are rising in ways not seen for more than half a decade amid this pandemic?
That is, well, it's a little difficult question to answer because eventually the guidance that you are provided is guidance which is provided by your lawyer. That is legal advice. The actual good thing that ADR and going online will achieve is a lot of frivolous adjournments that are taken by people. Uh, a lot of lawyers are in the practice of taking adjournments merely to bill their clients. So ADR is completely going to do away with that. Or even online hearings, if the courts do manage to continue with online hearings, it's going to completely do away with uh, procedural hearings that are not required. And it also makes lawyers much more accountable for their billing.
Okay, so the next question we have is, under which sections of Arbitration and Conciliation Act the cases are mostly filed?
So we have Section 9 of the Arbitration Act. Section 9 is something that deals with interim reliefs that may be provided to a party. So parties who are looking for, say, injunctions or stays from the court generally approach the court under Section 9. Section 9 operates in three phases. It can operate prior to the arbitration proceedings, during the arbitration proceedings, or after the arbitration proceedings. Um, but generally, they are initiated prior to constitution of the arbitral proceedings. The other section is Section 34, which is a section that deals with a challenge to an arbitral award. There is Section 11, which deals with appointment of arbitrators. These are the three main sections under which petitions are filed.
Okay, so the next question we have is, does it make a difference in conducting an arbitration hearing over Zoom meeting and the one conducted in person? How should the parties draft their language which puts them in the best position to take advantage of the virtual arbitration?
Well, certainly physical hearings have their own um weight, and Zoom or virtual hearings can, of course, never replace physical hearings. But having said that, I think we are really left with no option. Um, so the way I see physical online hearings moving is uh, parties and lawyers have to be far more concise and far more targeted in their arguments. They are not no longer be going to be allowed to argue the matter for, say, 2 hours or 3 hours at a stretch. Their arguments are going to be extremely restricted and extremely pointed. So I see that as a good thing.
Okay, sir, Soumya is asking, do you think it will influence the arbitration, as we can see relaxation of S.35 by the Punjab Haryana Bar Council?
I'm sorry, section 35 of which act are we talking?
I think there's nothing mentioned, but by the Punjab Haryana Bar Council is.
So the
uh,
Advocates Act. The Advocates Act.
Okay, and what is section 35 of the Advocates Act? I'll
So
have
it
to-
says that an advocate cannot practice any other profession, but just see, the Punjab and Haryana High Court has given relaxation to the Section 35 of the Advocates Act, which says that for the temporary basis, the advocates can practice any other occupation to meet the needs of the hours, as they cannot, they were not able to meet their end of needs.
Right.
This is what, and Section 35 states that you cannot practice any other profession except advocacy when you are enrolled.
I've understood. So is your question, what is the impact going to be on arbitrations? Is that your question?
What would be the impact on the entire career? Like in law, if we see everything is like virtually, if we talk about virtual hearing and mediations and arbitrations, it has a great impact on the career of the budding lawyers, if we say.
Right.
So what do you think? What will be the impact?
I really don't think it's going to have much of an impact, because anybody who's actually focused and committed to pursuing a career in law will be just as committed and focused to pursuing the career in law. So it's only for people who perhaps are unable to make themselves in law who it will assist, but I don't see it otherwise impacting any career.
Okay. The next question we have is from Priyanka Porwal. Why the parties would ever choose mediation an option for settlement when it is not binding on the parties, as no appeal lie in the court?
Well, mediation, as I had mentioned, is a completely voluntary, consensual mechanism, and the law on such consensual mechanisms is actually very clear, because nobody can force you into settling the matter. If the matter does not get settled through a mediation, then you go to court. So you have to be very certain when you are going to mediation, or even when you are signing a settlement agreement, that this is going to be the final settlement. It is going to be extremely difficult for any court to interfere with that mediation agreement, with the settlement agreement. So people who do opt for mediation are of course very clear in their minds that they do not want to litigate any further, and that just quite clear that they want to put a lid on the matter and settle it. So they're looking for a middle way out of the dispute.
Okay, I think the last question we would take for the session, as the time we are running out of the time. Wasim has reframed this question. If the arbitration on matter of a loan, the loan taker will not paid the amount, the matter goes to the court on notice given to witness to present.
Okay,
If the
so
witness provide present, the loan taker, then witness will withdraw their names in the matter of the case. I don't know how much question is clear to you.
yeah, it's still not very clear, but from what I can make out is he's asking me whether you can compel a witness to attend arbitration proceedings. And Wasim, to answer your question, you can compel a witness to attend arbitration proceedings. You will, however, require court assistance for this, because you have to file an application in court. If I'm not mistaken, under Section 26, you file an application in court. The court passes an order, and on the basis of that order, the witness then has to appear before the tribunal.
Okay, sir, we are taking this last question, which is from a student, I assume. Suggestions on how new law graduates can set foot or go into arbitration field.
While you're still in law school, I would say intern with lawyers who are focusing on arbitration. And apart from that, once you graduate from law school, also pick a particular firm or a lawyer whose practice largely consists of arbitrations, because it's important that you start at the junior most level with the basics of arbitration, and preferably pick a young lawyer. Don't pick somebody who's too senior, because a young lawyer will always have time to teach you.
Kaushal has asked which are the three important cases. I don't know in which
Important
regard.
cases.
In what regards? Yeah. If you can write that in the chat box right now, Kaushal would be taking that as the last one. Abhay Pratap is asking any chance to do internship under you.
Abhay, you can contact me directly.
Like, so you can share the first screen of your PPT wherein they can get your
Yeah.
contact details.
Yeah, just 1
In the
second.
meantime, I request Kaushal to complete up his question, and we'll be winding up the webinar.
So Abhay, this is my contact details are here, and you can contact me on this.
Okay, sir. So the Kaushal has completed the question, which are the 2 to 3 important cases under
Mhm.
Arbitration and Conciliation Act?
Okay. So Arbitration and Conciliation Act, well, like I had said, it's quite a complex piece of legislation. So there are no 2 or 3 main cases under the act itself. There are main cases under various sections. So there will be a lot of cases under, say, Section 9 of the Arbitration Act. There will be a lot of cases under Section 11. There will be a lot of cases under Section 34 of the Arbitration Act. So there is no 1 or 2 or 3 particular cases that deal with just the Arbitration Act as a whole, because the Arbitration Act is divided into sections. Each section has a particular function to perform, and the law on each section is very different.
Okay. I hope, Kaushal, your question has been answered by the sir. There are a lot of thank yous to you, sir, for the wonderful session, and I thank all the participants for their interactive session. I thank you, Angad sir, for taking out your precious time and give us few points on why this ADR is so important in today's time. And any ending note from your side, from sir?
I'd just like to thank everybody who's taken the time out to make it to the presentation. And of course, I'm available for any doubts that anybody has. My contact details are available.
Uh, At the ending note, I would like to thank Lloyd for organizing this webinar and all the team members who are behind the this meeting, making this meeting a successful one. Thank you all.
Yeah, and thank you to Lloyd
Yeah.
for inviting me onto the platform.